So the report came out today at 2:30, right as Danny Parkins was starting his show on The Score. Huh.
Weird.
Isn't that interesting?
I wonder. Yeah.
All right. But Danny said, sources, White Sox expected to announce Chris Getz as new lead baseball decision maker tomorrow. So that's the phrasing that Danny's going with. New lead baseball decision maker. What are your thoughts, Herb?
Let me just say this. I don't know Chris Getz. I only hung out with him one time back in the day with Chris Ranji.
Only hung out with Chris Getz one time?
Only one time. It was him.
Was it for his 25th birthday?
No,
because he's 40 today.
It was very young. It was him and Lance Broadway chilling at a bar, me, Chris Ranji, and somebody else. I forgot. John Danks, who paid for our drinks all night long, kicking it all night long. So that night, I was like,
Hollywood indeed.
Hollywood Herb.
it was Ranji. He just like, hey, come on out, Box. I got these guys with me. But he seemed like a great guy that day. So this, what I'm going to say, is not against the person. Because, of course, being the general manager of the White Sox or any Major League Baseball club is probably his lifelong goal as far as when he started this job. So I don't blame him. He is not qualified for the job he's about to take if reports are true from Danny Parkins, Bob Nightingale, etc. He is part of the problem that we just fired last week with Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams. He is part of that 7-year minor league farm director, and he hasn't really developed anybody that wasn't a first-round draft pick that made this person go from point A to point B to point C, where you're like, man, look at that development by the White Sox and Chris Getz doing the job. So, yeah, congratulations, Chris Getz. But me as a White Sox fan, and if you are a White Sox fan listening, of course, you're watching a White Sox podcast, I would be furious because this person doesn't fix the problem. He is part of the problem. Give me a solution. Give me an actual, well, if Chris Getz would have been the champion of this and the winner of this after a thorough search, I would have been skeptical anyway, but I would have said, hey, at least you checked everybody. You looked and you said Chris Getz is the number one guy. It seems in a week and a half, Jerry didn't do a lot of research, didn't do a lot of interviewing for other candidates. And so Chris Getz landing the job reportedly tomorrow makes me very mad as a White Sox fan because I don't see anything changing from what just happened. Why'd you fire the two guys who made this mess just to hire a guy who was on the staff and part of the problem? That's where I'm coming from.
I think that's a perfectly valid line of thinking for a fan of this team to have. Certainly the questions to whenever this introduction is going to happen, whether it's after the reported announcement tomorrow or further down the line, are going to be about that. Chris Getz, if you're the guy, what makes you different? What is going to make the future different than the past? Because, like you said, Herb, Chris Getz has been working under Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams for the last 7 years. It would seem to me that we had Rick Hahn stand up after Tony La Russa had to step down from the manager's position and say, we need somebody out from outside this organization. We need somebody who does not have White Sox DNA. We need some fresh perspective, some new line of thinking, which leads me to, he said the White Sox have been too insular in their hiring, right? He recognized that as the last baseball decision maker. As the guy who's coming in to be the new baseball decision maker, he's insular, right? He is full of White Sox DNA. He is literally the next person down the org chart, right? Mm-hmm. What is going to make Chris Getz's tenure different than Rick Hahn's from that standpoint? And that is not a question that Chris Getz really needs to answer. It's a question that Jerry Reinsdorf would need to answer. Jerry, why would you deem it necessary to remove Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams and then just, for lack of a better term, backfill, right? Yep. Into that position. So I am of the opinion that, hey, just because Chris Getz worked for those guys doesn't mean he's going to be a clone. Doesn't mean he's going to pick up the book How to Run the Team by Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn and just follow it play by play, right? He's his own man with his own thoughts, his own way of doing things. He could come in and have a very different perspective. But even that being said, we need to know what the great difference is between the guys who were just fired, they lost their jobs because this didn't go well, and the guy who is now coming in. So I think that, Herb, that skepticism you have and that a lot of fans are going to have if this report is true and this all comes to fruition the way Bob Nightingale laid it out a week ago that it would, that is perfectly acceptable to have that skepticism.
And I get your point saying that, maybe Chris Getz will have his own mind. He's a smart person, got into Wake Forest, got into Michigan, right? Maybe he'll be able to be a critical thinker and be able to think outside the box and do other things. But he is replacing people that not only hired him, but drafted him in 2005. Chris Getz' Major League Baseball story starts and has been continuing with the White Sox organization. There was a little bit of a siesta, maybe a study abroad where he went to Kansas City. But he has been a White Sox through and through. Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. Played for the Blue Jays, though, this last year of his career. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there's the study abroad.
International.
That's the study abroad, right? Yeah.
Dad moved for work, and then he studied abroad. But then, Chicago was always home. But I mean, it just reeks of the White Sox. And I get it. He might be able to do something.
Well, I'm just saying you gotta give it the benefit of the doubt, right? And I'm not trying to say he's smart. Smart people can handle this. It's just, think of anybody watching this. You work for somebody, right? You don't necessarily agree with everything they do just because they're your boss, right? If you probably come home at night and say, oh, I probably would have done that differently. I might have done this. Hey, it would be a good idea if we did this. And I'm saying think about that as it applies to this. But you're absolutely right. He has worked for this same front office that just failed to get this rebuild off the ground for the last 7 years.
And my biggest issue is not with Chris Getz. Again, I really do not care what Chris Getz has to say whenever he is reported to be announced. Whenever this happens, if it happens, right? I mean, we're not even sure that this is
Not official.
Yeah, I feel like I trust Danny more than Peggy Kaczynski. If we're gonna do a little chart here right now,
and more than Bob Nightingale,
a little power rankings.
Okay.
If Bob reports right now that Chris Getz is getting hired, or
he already did a week ago,
right? But if he's can confirm.
He's the guy that reported.
But if that it's happening tomorrow, I don't know. Maybe that's specific
I'm
detail.
confirming my report and confirming Danny report. Parkin's report that I reported. I'm confirming that too. I hope he gets paid for this, man. I hope Bob gets a lot of clicks for this because he was right again. We might, rank on the man. He gets 2 White Sox big time hires absolutely correct, and everybody was like, Bob, you're an idiot. Get out of here. And he's right on.
Because apparently Bob is the only person that gets to talk to Jerry Reinsdorf.
And that's fine.
Again, it's not fine.
He's worked his sources, and he's got this position to have the voice of the White Sox. I give him credit. I got to give him credit. He did his job.
No, but what I'm saying is the reason this all stinks, why you're in a stinky mood, is because of Jerry Reinsdorf.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I can't be mad at Chris Getz, but I do not care what he says whenever he is reported to be announced because Jerry Reinsdorf needs to explain the decision making. The White Sox, it is very possible that Chris Getz will be up there alone. Maybe there will be a moderator, but from White Sox representative, it is very possible that Chris Getz will be up there alone. There is no CEO right now. There is no COO. When the Bulls went through their change and hired Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley, Michael was there, or at least on the original press conference phone call, because there was COVID going on. He was on the phone call with AK, and he said why there needed to be change. There at least needs to be 5 minutes of, or whatever, maybe another statement of Jerry saying why he did this. And maybe I would, not a statement. I don't want to, so they're out. I want him to be asked questions.
I understand. I 100% I'm there with you, but we've seen with Jerry Reinsdorf, he's not that dude. And yes, we can be very boisterous and loud about it, and we should be. We should demand that our owner give us answers about why he makes decisions. But we know that Jerry Reinsdorf is not going to acquiesce to what we want. he's going to do what Jerry Reinsdorf wants. And that's his whole life. And he can feel that way because his whole life has led to this. Him being a billionaire, him being an owner of a baseball team. Whether we agree with it or not, he's had positive reinforcement every move he's made. Won 7 championships. I guarantee when he goes to his grave, he's like, hey, man, I did what I had to do. I was the owner of the Bulls and the White Sox. I brought home championships. Those people should be happy with what I did. Now, we can disagree with him as fans because I think his legacy will be one of a person that did less with more, and he should have did more. But there's no reason for him. If I was Jerry Reinsdorf, I wouldn't talk. Why would I talk? There's no reason. I don't need to talk to you, plebes.
Do you want to show up? Look how bad of a mood you are in. Do you want to go give that man money?
No, I want him to talk, and you want him to talk, and everybody who's watching or listening want him to talk. But if I was the man and I've heard exactly what everybody feels about me, why should I talk to you, plebes? Why should I talk to you, media? Who cares?
Because
I still own the team at the end of the day.
That's the same, that's the same smugness that people think billionaires have.
That's what he is.
Well,
that's who he is.
I hate billionaires.
Yes.
So fuck that guy.
Yeah.
It's a very bad position that he's in, and I don't think he realizes it because that stadium's empty. And if Chris Getz is the only change that happens, and maybe Dayton Moore walks in too, and those are the two guys, I think it's going to be more empty than it is right now. I mean, we talk about 25% up around all MLB. There's like 6 teams that are below attendance this year, and the White Sox are the leaders in that race, at least for year-over-year loss. The White Sox are not going to pack the house next year, and they're trying to renew season tickets. That's not going to inspire season ticket renewal right now. That commercial that they put together with all those fans that talked about how great it is to all the their fans that that they've built being White Sox fans. People are going to stop wanting to spend money because they are sick of the stink that this organization is. So Jerry needs to go answer questions, even if it is just
But even if they
trivia.
don't have enough fans and they have fewer fans next year than they had this year, Jerry's still going to be like, my pockets are fat. Man, I don't give a F what y'all fans say. I'm still getting my pockets lined by you coming to the game, by you watching the game, and MLB's going to supplement the money otherwise with the TV contracts. He knows that his money's not from the fans. His money's from the TV contracts now. He's wised up, and he understands that he doesn't give a damn about what we feel, but damn sure every single day that I get a chance to talk about Jerry Reinsdorf being a terrible owner, I'll be here on CHGO White Sox saying, you're a terrible owner. You might have won 7 championships, but you haven't won the hearts of the fans. You haven't. When you finally sell this team or you leave this earth, you're going to have a terrible legacy as the owner, a horrible legacy, and I'll pass that on as long as I live because you're not trying to win. This hiring of Chris Getz is just garbage. It's absolute trash. Not for the person, but it does. This man is not qualified for the job he's currently at, and he won't be qualified for the job that he will take. As we say, process over results. Even if Chris Getz next year, the White Sox win more games than they won this year. It doesn't mean the hiring was good. It just means they just bounced back from a shitty year. And Jerry Reinsdorf is responsible for this shitty team and how bad the fan angst is and how empty that stadium is going to be. And he thinks he's going to get money from this city or this state to build a new stadium? Man, you out of here, bum ass dude.
All right. Anything you'd like to add, or let me take a little break here?
I'll just say, to your points, Sean, he's not an elected official. He does not have any obligation to speak at all. He owns a private company. He has no obligation to speak at all. I cover the team. I have a lot of questions for him. Yep. You know what I mean? I'm trying to tell you guys why things happened. He's the guy who made the decision to fire Kenny Williams, to fire Rick Hahn, and to hire the next guy that is reportedly going to be Chris Getz. The only person that can answer why those things happened is him, because he made the decisions. Throughout my time covering the team, Rick Hahn has been the general manager. Jerry hired Rick Hahn to talk about the baseball stuff, and all of the why of the decisions that were made through the baseball side were supposedly Rick Hahn's decisions. So we're talking to Rick Hahn. There is now nobody in that position, and the change that's being made in the front office right now is directed by Jerry Reinsdorf. So yeah, in a situation where we need to figure out the reasoning behind these things, he's the person that can answer that. We would like him to talk, and he should talk if he wants to get out there the reasoning for why he's making moves. He's getting slammed, Herb, not wrongfully so, for making these decisions. He should stand up and tell you why he made those decisions. But at the end of the day, Nobody elected him anything.
And then
No,
tomorrow,
I know,
he doesn't
but-
owe an explanation to anybody other than we would like to know what it was.
And I understand that, but Rick Hahn's saying that you have to win the trust of the fans back before this season. Yeah. And it's been a horrible decision, or a horrible season, and now you have to go make the decision that Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams need to be removed. I think it's spineless to not defend your decision, I think it's spineless to not try to win the fans back. If he doesn't speak on the Chris Getz thing, I think he's spineless.
And
I don't care if
that.
he's elected or not. Just as a fan, why would I ever want to support that man?
And think about what
and that's your decision. And
Yeah.
If it gets to the point where it affects his business, then he's going to take notice. But as Herb said, owning a Major League Baseball team is not exactly something that is a negative in any way from a business standpoint.
But it could be more of a positive with the way that attendance is up all around.
Sure,
Major
but
League
also
Baseball.
I would
There's
just say
one
this,
team with like two drastic
You're absolutely
differences,
right.
and it's the Nationals and White Sox who are clearly just,
You're absolutely right. But also
underperforming.
the point is, too, and Rick Hahn said this all the time, especially this year and including last year, and he was absolutely right. Win.
Yeah.
Win.
And this
if they hire Chris Getz and they make the playoffs, then in 2025, the stadium's going to be full.
But think about this. If Jerry doesn't speak before the Chris Getz press conference, you're putting a lot of unfair and undue pressure on Chris Getz because questions will be asked of him that he doesn't fucking have answers for. And he's going to be like, I don't fucking know. He hired me. I took the job. Shut up. Type of thing. And from day one, Chris Getz won't get a chance to be a general manager like other general managers are, a chance to actually do his job and see if he can do the job. Because immediately after he gets hired, people are like, it's the same guy. It's a puppet. He's
Immediately after, you feel that way now.
Yeah.
He hasn't even been hired yet, at least
He
not
hasn't been
officially.
announced, yeah.
Exactly.
And so I was saying this when we were talking earlier. The fan sentiment toward Chris Getz, the day he takes over the new era of White Sox baseball, is going to be the exact same as the fan sentiment was around Rick Hahn on the day he was fired for not getting the job done because the decision was made to hire someone from within. Now, again, Chris Getz, take the GM job. Good for you. You know what I mean? Like, congratulations on your promotion kind of thing. But it is a spot that most situations would not put those people in.
Exactly.
Most situations, there is this search that goes on. There is we're going to find somebody from the outside. I mean, listen, there were plenty of people that were nonplussed by the Pedro Grifol hire, but they weren't like, oh, they just are bringing in the same guy that just did this last year. People were willing to say, okay, well, we'll see what happens.
Yep.
And I think, and then he had his press conference, and most people felt very positive about it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what happens when you go and get somebody from outside the organization and you actually make the change that you deem is needed. Jerry Reinsdorf believes that change was necessary. He fired the two people who were running the baseball department.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have done that if he didn't think that there needed to be change. But the change is now going to happen at such a tiny degree because there's nobody from outside the organization coming in to make that just natural change. Chris Getz is going to have to fight really hard to show that the change that is coming in is the size that it needs to be.
Right. And again,
and the only way you're going to do that is if by winning.
And Chris Getz's biggest believer is Jerry Reinsdorf. Like, again, it's just the same thing that, it's more loyalty. It's another guy, Jerry's guy. It's another institutional guy. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, who else is clamoring for Chris Getz?
No one.